let us now look at what is an activity, the work breakdown structure, and a schedule in a project. This is quite an important topic as far as the project goes, whether it is at the estimation level or when you really execute the project. All your earned value analysis will be based on this. So let's look at what is a project activity. Activity in a project or a method to identify, document the work or tasks that are accessible to produce the necessary project deliverables. So that's a kind of a definition. So activity or a task is the kind of a, you need to really find it out at a lowest level, kind of a defined work, which will have a start date and end date. It will have a duration, and more importantly, a resource needs to be assigned. The resource, if you look at it, this resource can be manpower, and it can be additionally, apart from the manpower, it can be machinery as well. And sometimes, yeah, it could be just machinery alone. So some work unit plus a resource contribute an activity, and that activity has a kind of a cost associated with that, unless it is going to be a milestone. A group of activity will combine to form a milestone just to have an information. It's said to be milestone. Otherwise, needs to be a defined documented work plus the resource is what an activity is supposed to be. So, and again, from the activity, it will be grouped to form a work package, and that is where, or it could be from top to down, you have a work and then you break down into multiple activities, and that becomes a work breakdown structure. So to define activities in a project, you need to have work package, and that is the work breakdown structure that becomes prominent. So that becomes prominent input to the scope baseline. So baseline is something like during the estimation stage, you get approval or you get an agreement with all the stakeholders. This is what is going to be the duration of the entire project or for the specific milestone, and then you baseline it. Every project activities could be estimated, scheduled, and managed. This is quite important. That is, needs to be estimated, scheduled, monitored, and managed. So estimated scheduling, we'll see that it's basically like one after the other. Some of the activities can be done simultaneously, parallelly. So that is kind of a schedule, or you build up a dependency. Like these two activity A and B is completed, then only C can start. So that is schedule. And monitoring is whether the lead lag happens, whether you are lagging behind, then activity C cannot be started unless A and B are finished. So you need to do a monitoring, and that is what is managed. Also managed is where you make calculations, the earned value analysis, which says whether you are behind schedule or ahead of schedule or behind, whether there is a cost overrun or it is, you are managing the cost pretty well. So this is a kind of a work breakdown structure and kind of a real life example. So each one of them is a kind of an activity. For foundation, you need to have a blueprint. Then dig the earth will be an activity, and you will have a resource associated with that. And you need to have, for digging the earth, the labor will be different, materials will be different, and you keep that material and then lay the foundation. So all these will be an activity, and you combine to form this activity into a work package, and the work package is kind of a milestone. So again, if you look at it, unless foundation is completed, so unless you complete the foundation, you cannot go into the construction of pillars, beams, construction of walls. So you have a dependency. So building of pillars, beams depends upon the completion of the foundation. So this activity completion leads to the building structure. So you have an activity. The bottom line is you have an activity. Activities are combined to form the work breakdown structure, and the work breakdown structure could be indicated as a milestone, also indicated as a milestone as well. And then you might have a dependency between the activities. Maybe once an activity completed, then the next activity could start, or you can run the activities parallelly, or sometimes you might have build dependency based on 2 or 3 activities. That is also possible. So this is how the scheduling looks like. This is again for the website rollout. Here you have all the activity one after the other, but in real life it may so happen that you might need to start 2 of the activities, then completion of 2 or 3 activities, you start the subsequent next activity. So this is the project schedule, and this is called a Gantt chart. This mentioned here, this is called the Gantt chart, and it is very important in project scheduling. There are various tools, the MS projects, Oracle Primavera. All these uses Gantt chart extensively for project scheduling. So one need to have a good understanding of these tools as well. Like towards project management, one need to have maybe need to depending upon the requirement, the organization might be using MS projects, or it could be through Oracle Primavera. Mostly in the construction industry, Oracle Primavera is quite used, and I do have courses on both of them, the MS projects and as well as in Oracle Primavera as well. Let's now look at the activities and the relationship. So the relationships are very important. So we earlier saw about the work breakdown structure. So work breakdown structure is project deliverable that organizes the project team into the manageable sections. So it's a kind of a hierarchical decomposition, and it's very important because when you have a logical sequence of work, then it is much more easier to manage. So the logical work units, then yes, it is much more easier to manage. So if you look at it, the top, this is what is the WBS top, and then yeah, even you can consider HRSys as the WBS, and underneath you have the other WBS, and the last one is the activities, the requirement analysis, system design, system implementation, and so on and so forth. And based on these activities, you build up the relationship. We'll see that. So activities are fundamental work element of a project, and also it is sometimes it is refers cross-verified as task. So both relates to the same. And again, it is the lowest level of WBS, most dedicated work unit tracked in the project schedule. And yes, this is where to the activities you assign resources and cost. If it is something like you assign a missionary, then there is a missionary cost. We use the missionary and return it back. Then you will be paying a rental cost to it. So it's a smallest subdivision of work that has direct impact on the project execution and progress. Now there could be different activities, and this is where the project manager's role is critical, and that is where the understanding of the project works become essential as well. So there are different types of relationship. One is finish to start, which is the most common one, and start to start. This is also common. When you can carry out work simultaneously, then you use start to start, and then finish to finish. Yes, only if 2 jobs completes, then the next one can start. A finishes, B finishes, and then you can start off with C. We'll see that later in a critical path method. And finally, start to finish, slightly you might not see more on the this kind of a relationship, but yes, from a relationship perspective, there are 4 different activity relationship which constitute the network diagram. And for creation of the Gantt chart, and day in and day out, generally project manager use the Gantt chart towards the tracking the project to check whether it goes on the schedule. So finish to start, simple one. First activity finishes, the second activity can start. So sidewalls example you have is the sidewalls in the building can be taken up only after completion of the foundation. So that's finish to start, and the most common one. Start To start, yes, both can be started simultaneously. I mean, there's no dependency on each of them. So, for example, here, landscaping, if you're constructing, landscaping can be started when building interior work is carried out at a later stage of the project. And then both the activities finish at the same time, and then the next activity could start. Say, for example, when both the things are completed, finish to finish, then it is said that the next task can start. All plumbing and electrical work is completed before the building can be used. I mean, occupancy is started to the building, that is finished to start. The last one is when activity A start, B finishes. Example is old machine can be shut down and new machines are erected, but generally rare in the scenario. So if you understand, the activities and relationship is very critical for a project manager to understand and assign the activity, because that is where the scheduling plays a critical role. Once you have the activities defined, and then you perform the scheduling. See, suppose for example, you have activity A, activity B, activity C. So this is the predecessor of activity B, and this is supposed to be called as successor of the activity. And then once at you can start activity E and F simultaneously. There is no dependency over here. And then once both the things completes, you start off with the activity G. This is called the network logic diagram, and this is what is going to see in the, I mean, you will have the Gantt chart as well, where after activity A, then activity B starts and so on. So just as an example, suppose activity A is starting on the 1, then it is supposed to be 10th day, it's going to complete, then it could be on the 11th day, because you are sequencing them. You are sequencing the activity. So activity A start, activity only after completion of activity A, activity B starts and so on. So that's about the network logic diagram and the task dependency. Thank you.